To you and introduce myself. This was something that indigenous people did when we first came upon friends and people we consider friends and family. Chintamo hitoklo, ane miki siku holam hachita lami yamase hajo, miku yamase yate, impuse repaka hajo, miku tuka siya matla, ane miku yamase yate. Real simple. It is my honor and pleasure as I am Chief Siku Hajo of the Yamassee Indian tribe. I am the blood descendants of two head chiefs of the Seminole people, Arapaka Hajo, also known as Sam Jones, and John Hicks, Tukasia Matla. Two of the most mysterious figures who was written out of history. They have points in history, but they was also written out, and you can understand why. So it's my honor and pleasure to be a part of this podcast and to introduce my people. Around and you know me for the me and you today can watch these old westerns and you can look and say, okay, that's a white man pretending to be an Indian, right? But for us as the first people, which we are, we identify ourselves in a way that is not necessarily indigenous, because even the word indigenous, most people think that word is Indian, but that's not where the word Indian comes from. It comes from indigo. And when the colonizers came here, they saw people that were blue-black. They saw people that were in their language, indigo. They were dark-skinned people. And to help people in your audience understand what I'm saying to them is that we have been programmed, which is what television is, television programming, to believe that when we see the first people, when we see people who say we're indigenous and native to this land, that they look a certain type of way. And most of the time, we are looking at people who look mostly Asian. Well, that's because there were a group of Asian people who came over at a certain point in time and came to the land, and they mixed in with the indigenous indigo people. And so when you look at these people like the Navajo, the Sioux, the Lakota, you look at these old pictures of them, you see these dark-skinned Asian addict-looking Native Americans that were the first people who now their descendants don't even look nothing like them, but they are the original people. My people were the first people that the colonizers came into contact with. And my people were the first ones that made contact with the Europeans and helped them. And what's true is it's not about what I say. Everything I say can be researched. Everything I say can be validated. And one of the things that I had to do as a chief was allow my bloodline to be put out there and allow the archaeologists, the genealogists to come in and interview us. I allowed the federal government to come in because you think about it. I look black, even though we know this is the original color of the red man. This is red. Not that pale washed out color that we see now. This is red. This is copper tone. But I had to put my bloodline out there so that people could understand who we was, and I had to say, this is who I'm related to, and this is who I'm from, and this is where my people was from. And then once the archaeologists said, yeah, that's them, that's the Yamassee, once they start putting me in the history book, because that's something most people don't even realize. I am the first person of color that is literally in the South Carolina history book that children read about and they see. That's monumental because I'm still alive. I'm not passed on or been murdered or assassinated like the rest of the leaders who have been. I'm still alive. And so we have had so many accomplishments and we have had so much to go on, but there is nothing that I'm saying to you that cannot be researched, validated, and shown to be true through historical documents. And I go, you don't know who I am. Why? Because you're trying to be something that you are not. You're trying to identify with something that is not tribal and cultural. It's one of the things that I try to tell people who identify as African Americans. You claim to be African American, but what is African about you? What cultural practices do you have? Can't say collard greens and cornbread. That was a Native American thing. There was no corn that was bought over. So what is African about yourself? And why haven't you had to prove that you are African? Why isn't it not considered cultural appropriation by you claiming to be something you can't prove you are? You see? Because when I have speeches and I do these events, I'll ask by a show of hands, how many of you had a grandmother that identified as full-blooded Indian? And 90% of the audience will raise their hand up. And then I'll turn around and say, how many of you consider yourself African-American? Those same 90% will stick their hand up. We took the Yamassee to the West Indies. Right. Personally, that says that there was a lot of Yamassee for you to take us to the West Indies. You didn't say we took them to Puerto Rico or Cuba. You said the West Indies. Right. Part two of that conversation is that a lot of who we are and what we are lies within what we found within our bloodline. So as we search for our indigenous bloodline, have you searched for your African bloodline? Because what happens with the African side of you is they had ship rolls. They had stock, right? And most people who find themselves to be African-American from Africa, they can go from their grandmother, their grandfather, all the way back to the slave ship. They can find them on the roads. Those of us who cannot is because our parents was never or grandparents was never on the ship.
Right. Oh, that's it. Right. Right.
So simplify your search. Simplify the search. Don't start with, let me look for an Indian ancestor.
I have a question.
Please.
Speak a little bit about the so-called document of discovery that a lot of tribes are trying to get the Vatican to return back to all of the Native American tribes, and how the so-called Aboriginal community, they don't speak nothing about this, and this is a big controversial topic. Speak a little bit about that.
So let's first delve into the Doctrine of Discovery has already been talked about by the Vatican. They've already said what they said. They overturned the Doctrine of Discovery. The question becomes now, what do we do with that? Because this land is formatted on treaties.
Right.
None of it matters as long as treaties are in place. Here's the thing the United States government knows, and this is a jewel, and I'm not trying to say, and I'm not trying to influence anybody in their thought process, but something real simple. No treaties, no United States. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.